Hello. So this is the second day of Comic-Con Worlds and beginning the live now, except that I have to wait for just a minute as the live goes up to YouTube, and then I can throw it into the Comic-Con Worlds website. So just a second there. And okay, that's one. Now let's see if it's going up to website. Hello, hello. Okay, the sound from YouTube is fine. Now let's see if it's going up to the Comic-Con Worlds website. All this takes a bit of time, but yeah, seems to be working. Let's see if there's sound here. Again, just like yesterday. There we go. A lot of websites open at the same time, and I'll cut out this beginning by tomorrow when YouTube allows it. So, hello again. Sam Hart here from Comic-Con Worlds Year 1, also known as December 2020. Yesterday I showed a bit of my work over the years, my professional work with Tony Lee, Anthony Johnson, The Coldest City, Heroes and Heroines graphic novels, and my recent productions here in Brazil, which include Mega Ultra, a superhero in the Amazon jungle, and also 10 Lost Days, which is what I'm working on at the moment. You can see a few of these comics here in the back, and it's an 8-part mini-series, and I'm currently on the 6th issue, and I'm kickstarting, or doing the equivalent to Kickstarter, with a Brazilian crowdfunding site called Catarse, and the 6th issue is up at the moment, and I'm working on it as we speak, basically. So today, I think for this live, I like to show a bit of, tell a bit more about my life, because I'm half Brazilian and half British. So I was born in England, and I lived there for 10 years, the first 10 years of my life. My mother, who has already passed away, was Brazilian. So all of my Brazilian family is on my mother's side, and my British family is from my father's side. So I have family in both countries. And as I came to Brazil when I was 10, I have dual nationality. I have family there, family here, and I have dual nationality. So um, I'm not an expat. I actually have two countries to choose from and to visit and see family and friends whenever possible. Taking advantage of that possibility of being able to stay in London, where my family currently lives, my father's family currently lives, and also São Paulo, Brazil. I studied in Brazil until I was 18. I did a couple of years at college for architecture, and then I decided to take a break and check out England. So I went to live. I had already visited a couple of times, but I went to live for a couple of years in London. And let me just say hello to Juliano, who's a colleague. He's an ex-student of mine, and he does amazing comics. So check out his work if possible. And so I went to England. I was 22 at the time. As I said, I was halfway through architecture college, and I immediately sought out the comic groups, the various comic groups. This was before internet. This was 95. So I actually went to an an internet cafe. Internet was just beginning, email was just beginning, the World Wide Web was not really a thing yet. It was like, what is this www thing? And so you just registered and you made an email, and very few people were using email at the time. And I stayed in England from 95 to 97. I already knew Paul Gravett from the Cartoon Art Trust. And at the time, David Lloyd had just closed down his school. He had a school which I don't remember the name at the moment, but it was for budding artists and writers. So they had made a partnership where all the classes that had been given at David Lloyd's school were now being given at the Cartoon Art Trust. I didn't have money to pay for the classes, so I volunteered at the Cartoon Art Trust, cleaning up, helping with exhibitions, painting the walls, and with that, I got the classes for free. And there were a lot of really good tutors. There was David Lloyd, who gave master classes once a month. There was Dave Gibbons. There was also Win Wiacek, writer, who did some amazing stuff for 2000 AD. Um, there was Al Johnson, artist, incredible stuff, a lot of stuff for Vertigo. And there were a couple of others. There was one who gave general anatomy. He worked with advertising and cartoons. I don't remember his name, but he was a really nice guy and a great teacher. He wasn't actually in the comic business. So it was a great experience, and I helped out, worked there, studied for about a year or more. Um, and then one of my colleague students, Lorenzo, he gave me the tip that there were some people looking for artists to draw not Starship Troopers, sorry, VR Troopers and Power Rangers. So I went to, it was a small publishing house, but they had these licenses, and I showed my portfolio, and I did work for them for about a year before they folded, owing quite a lot of people money. So that was a great experience, although I didn't get paid for my last job at this company. And I did do a graphic design course for about 6 months at a place called Bibliothèque in northeast London. Great place. I learned finally how to use a computer, and I got an assistant job. It wasn't even a job to begin with. It was just a work experience for about a month with John Higgins, the colorist on Watchmen, and he was doing Pride and Joy for Vertigo at the time. So I helped out with the colors on that. That was great fun. I actually stayed on for quite a few months after the work experience, so almost a year working with him. And I loved the work. The work in England was great, and the people were wonderful. But I was missing Brazil. So after 2 years, I came back to Brazil, and I've been living here ever since, although I do go to visit England whenever possible. And I did go back. So this was 97. I went back 7 years later with portfolio in hand, trying to get my career back on track. So before I continue, I'd like to show my humble beginnings with my very first fanzine. A lot of people, a lot of artists start out with fanzines. At the time, they were printed fanzines. Nowadays, it's mostly virtual. But this was a comic that I put together with some friends, and a couple of friends actually. And I was probably 14 at the time. Photocopied it, stapled it together, sent out to sell hand by hand with friends at school mostly. At this time, I also started trying to put together a professional portfolio as close as possible, and I published in various small press comics. So there was a story of mine here. Quite a few people who published here began a proper career in comics or illustration. I also got together with a few friends and did proper sized fanzines and this one won a couple of awards. So this was good fun making superhero parody. It was basically, as most fanzines are, we would do whatever we wanted to, every kind of story all in one place. That was all of that was mostly at the time I was at school. So from the age of 12 to 18, 17, 18. And before that, I mean, I decided to do comics already when I was in England. When I was 6 years old, I read comics, every kind of comics, Beano, Dandy, Whizzer and Chips. I mean, anything that, even action, battle that I didn't really enjoy, the war stories at the time, but I'd read every kind of comics. I was in love with the form. I didn't have a TV at home, or I had a TV, but basically it was very limited access and black and white and fuzzy picture. And at one point it was battery run, so we only had 2 hours of TV a week or a month, basically. So comics were escapism, pure escapism, and it was great fun. And when I was 6, I said, "This is what I want." So it took me 4, 5 years before I actually began doing fanzines at school. But I continued doing fanzines throughout the whole of school and then at college as well. So this was a fanzine from my time at college. Andre is Andre Freitas, another colleague, is commenting on my British accent. Well, I don't get much practice, Andre. So it just comes out naturally. This is the 10-year-old me. This is the last time I spoke British English constantly. But no, if I speak with American speakers, if I spend a couple of weeks speaking English, then I think the British accent gets softer. Speaking of England, so halfway through college, although I was doing fanzines and illustration work and a few comic jobs here and there, I went to England in '95, and as I said, I did the comic course. I illustrated VR Troopers, but I didn't stop doing fanzines and getting together with other people. There was the Illustrators Society that used to meet in a pub once a month, and so we would get to know uh, colleagues and other professionals or people who were trying to break in. And this was not through the Illustrator Society, but it was done at the time. So I was drawing and inking uh, somebody else's creation at the time. So it was quite experienced. Got paid for this. This was from the Illustrator Society. They had a fanzine of their own, a comics forum, and this was a cover I did for them at the time, inked by Mark Woolley, who changed his name to Mark Badham Moore some years later. So after '97, I came back to Brazil, started working professionally with illustration and coloring, actually, due to my experience with John Higgins. I was one of the few illustrators who was doing digital coloring at the time. This is '97. Nowadays, everybody has a computer, works on the computer, does computer coloring. But at the time, it wasn't very common. There were 2 or 3 people here in Brazil, and I had this foreign experience. But doing illustration work, and I was doing 3D work for magazines. I thought, no, I have to get back into comics at some point. So in 2004, again, Andre was one of the people. I was in a comic called Front, and there were other comics and fanzines at the time, but Front was quite a big one, large group of people. And at Front, I met a couple of friends, 3 friends actually, and we put together a comic called Chaos. So we had interviews with Brazilian authors and British authors, and we had comics, plenty of comics. We did this more in a Vertigo line. It was, so although it was much a fanzine. Nobody was paid for this. We decided to have um, a style of story put together, and it went to newsagents. And we knew that it was only going to exist for about 3 issues. So yeah, it was a great experience. We did it for a year. Nobody got paid anything, but it got our work out there. And I continued that. So by then, this is 2004. By then, the internet, was a big thing. There were forums, there were places you could talk and show your work. It was all dial up at the time, but you could talk. You could meet, you could show your work. And one of the people I met online was William Rees, and we did this Ashcan edition of one of his stories, Raw Play. This is a Russ Heath cover, and this is some of my artwork from the story. So black and white, very similar to what I'm doing at the moment. I love black and white. I love black and white artwork. Um, uh, I love to read it, and I love to work with it. And I was getting back in touch with England, the forums, as I said. There was Aid Brown, who put together just one page every year. He'd do this at benefit comic magazine with artwork from various people. All the artwork was donated for auction, and then it was any money went to benefit, if I'm not wrong, a hospital. Here's one of my Judge Dreads. Where is it? This way. That one. There. Oops. And also Travis Johnson put together Variance Press and this issue, which was an anthology, various authors, Anthony Johnson, Tony Lee, Alex de Campi, plenty of people, and I published a story here as well. So I got to know quite a lot of people online by this time. So this was between 2002, 2004, and by 2004 I began going to England at UCAC, the Bristol Comic Convention, and I met most of these people live. And as I said, from then on I started doing Starship Troopers and other collaborations. I didn't stop collaborating with fanzines, both in England and in Brazil. I do the occasional cover or illustration. But all of this basically it's a lot of work making comics, and it takes a lot of time. So doing fanzines, uh, uh, bettering your style, be it through classes or publishing, actually getting to see your work in print, even if it's photocopied. I mean, nowadays you get to see your work online, you receive criticism or suggestions from other professionals, and eventually in 2008 I did my first story for 2000 AD, and that was basically, that was closure of some sort from my dream of doing comics since I was 6, because when I was 6, I was reading every humor comic, every action comic, and also 2000 AD. So I had this character, Judge Dredd, who was I think this was probably my first experience of drawing a character that I read as a kid, the same magazine, the same character, same authors, being published side to side. So that was a long journey, but it was well worth it. And since then, I've just been publishing nonstop and making my own stories. So that's been a bit of a journey and great fun. I think later on today, my second live of the day, I'll probably actually go to the drawing table and draw a bit with you guys. Okay, so register a bit of how it's actually done. So, unless Andrea and Giuliano have any questions or suggestions, I think I'll wrap it up now. And I hope you have a great time at Comic-Con. all the best. Please visit me at my page at Comic Con. If you're not there, if you're at YouTube, go to the Comic Con webpage. If you're at Comic Con, go to my YouTube channel. Plenty more to see and have a look at. A lot is in Portuguese, but these lives for Comic Con will be in English. So have a great day, Andre and Juliano. All the best.